Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me today while I make these delicious acorn squash stuffed with wild rice and mushrooms. If this is your first time here, I'm Tracy Martorana. I make videos with healthy recipes, herbal remedies, simple living topics, and a little bit of yoga and meditation. If that sounds good to you, please subscribe to my channel so you never miss a future video. I washed my squash and cut off the tip so that it can stand upright from both ends. And then the most difficult part of this whole recipe is cutting the squash in half. Use an abundance of caution here, as these squash are very firm and therefore very difficult to cut. Once it's in two pieces, I'm just using a spoon to scrape out the seeds, which you can clean and roast just like pumpkin seeds. I'm then adding a light coating of olive oil before I bake these on a parchment-lined baking sheet at 425 degrees for about 30 minutes. The goal is to bake until they are tender, but not like mushy. And then while they bake, I'm making the filling. In a small saucepan, I'm sauteing just a couple tablespoons of diced onion. I have a yellow onion. Use whatever kind of onion you have. And then I have 2 small stalks of celery. If you had bigger celery, 1 would probably suffice. And I'm adding a little bit of salt, pepper, garlic powder, basil, thyme, and poultry seasoning. Note that the basil and the thyme that I'm using are dried from my garden, so they're not that finely ground spice that you tend to find in the grocery store, so it may look like I'm using a little bit more than I really am. Once the onions are tender, I'm adding a 1/3 cup of this wild rice blend that I rinsed and then strained out in this metal strainer. And then I'm adding 2/3 cup of veggie broth. This has to simmer until the rice is done. Read your package directions to get an idea of how long this will take. Mine required about 45 minutes. And note that if you run out of liquid in your rice before the rice is tender, just add a little more broth. And if the opposite occurs and you end up with tender rice but still a little bit too much liquid in the pan, just gently drain the excess. While the rice and squash are both cooking, I cleaned up a bit of my mess and then moved on to the mushrooms. I simply used cremini mushrooms because they're cheap, tasty, and readily available. However, feel free to use any mushroom variety you can find or use a medley. Portobello, shiitake, and oyster mushrooms would all be wonderful. I cleaned the mushrooms, chopped them into small pieces. You really don't need a ton. I probably only used about a half a cup or so, maybe a little more. And then I'm sauteing the mushrooms in a little bit of olive oil until they're softened and lightly browned. Then I'm turning off the heat, and these can just sit here until the rice is done. I'm adding the rice into the mushrooms, then adding a good 1/4 cup of chopped pecans, but you could also use walnuts or pistachios, and then a handful of dried cranberries. Stir it all together, and then it's time to stuff the squash. Since both my squash and stuffing were hot, I could have served it right away, but instead I popped it back into the oven to keep it warm while I sauteed up some beet greens and spinach to have on the side. I'm also chopping a little parsley to add on top. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to click on the thumbs up, leave me a comment, and share the video with your friends. Doing so lets YouTube know that people are interested in content like mine. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.